are live. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone. And I think it's going to be good night for a few, like Michael. There, Kathy has joined us. We are still waiting for one more panelist, Jochen Witt from JWC. Will, as and when he comes, he will join in himself. Yes, welcome. Welcome to this great array of panelists. And we're going to have a nice, relaxed session. We have with us Kathy Bredin, a well-known face to many of us in India and the world. She is the CEO of the Center for Exhibition Industry Research, CEIR. We have David Audrain, who is the CEO of ExpoDev.co and the Executive Director of CISO. And of course, our own Michael Duck, Executive Vice President of Informa Markets and the incoming UFI President. Congratulations, Michael. Yes. Wait for Jochen Witt to join us as and when. But time is of essence, and this is a great panel, so I don't want to waste any time. I'm going to be talking about two things. We now are definitely in recovery, and this is a global phenomenon. So let's start on a benchmark of, well, what are we looking at full recovery? There are some reports which have come out, the CEIR report and also JWC Consult, that end 2023 seems to be that magic time. We'll talk amongst ourselves whether we agree to this or not. And then let's talk company-wise and country-wise and the few places we have over here on the challenges we are going to face and how different are they going to be from what we envisaged them a year ago, and take it from there. Kathy, your report, along with some of the others, Jochen, for example, have said that end 2023 is going to be the full recovery. Could you throw some light on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. SEER just released the SEER Index report that measures the economic performance of the B2B exhibitions industry over time back to the year 2011. And our economist has forecasted that by the end of 2023, that the U.S. exhibitions industry will be back to where it was in 2019. Now, that certainly isn't all of the sectors. It will be many of the sectors will be back to where they were in 2019. But certainly some of the industry segments are going to be struggling and will not have recovered by 2019. I'm sorry, by 2023. We are, forecasting. Of course, it's a forecast. The underlying fundamentals of the economy are very healthy. Here in the United States, the exhibitions industry tracks very closely to GDP. We have certainly seen what's happened over the last 20 months where, compared to where we were during the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, and where we are today, the industry was totally decimated by the pandemic. But again, the underlying fundamentals of the economy here in the United States are still very sound. Historically, the industry tracks very closely with GDP, and we anticipate that recovery will gain momentum the beginning of next year. Of course, it also depends on the pandemic and the rising and the fall of cases, as well as the vaccination rate on a global basis. So that's a very high level what we are seeing and forecasting at this point.
Kathy, are you referring mainly to the U.S. market, or is the report?
Yeah, so the U.S. market, this is just focused on the U.S. market. Of course, Jochen has great data on what he is seeing globally in his data. So, but it is nice that because we share documents with one another, so we are able to it's nice that, his forecast and our forecast are in alignment. which is good news for us all.
Right. Well, I just hope that the technical glitch that Jochen is facing can be overcome and we can have him. But before we do that, and David, before I come to you for more specifics about the Americas, Michael, what do you say to this end 2023? And also, Informa Markets is ahead of the game, if you want to say, on the recovery path on a global level. Could you share some of your in-house little insights, secrets as to where you are doing Far East Asia Pacific, Middle East, India? We just did REI. What can you tell us?
Okay.
Here I am.
Oh, there he is. Hang on a minute, Michael. Before you come, wait. It's first of all, ladies and gentlemen, it is not Sebastian Witt.
No,
whether we like it or not, it is. We are stuck with the senior. So Jochen, welcome.
It's the old Sebastian.
Yes, it's the old Sebastian. The old Sebastian. We did start off the session, and Kathy has just given us her insight through a report about the 2023 magic date of full recovery. And I have asked Michael to talk about it on a case-to-case basis from the Informa Markets case study. And I'm going to come back to you, Jochen. Michael is
perfect.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks very much indeed to Raghav for organizing this and Ravi for moderating. And it's great to see David, Kathy, and Sebastian. Oh, sorry, Jochen.
It's okay, Michael.
in Mallorca. And great to be able to talk to you again. And somewhat better than the last time I think we had the Zoom call when things were looking pretty bleak.
Yeah.
I do remind people who are online that I'm actually based in Hong Kong, where I'm talking from. And I haven't actually left here since March 2020 because of the very strict travel restrictions and quarantines that there are still in Hong Kong and also in China. However, even though we've got these restrictions, China has remained to be one of the best places for the past 7 or 8 months, where we've been able to continue to have many very large trade shows. This is it's actually been very interesting to see that in some cases the trade shows have been even bigger than they were back in 2019, and this predominantly has been with domestic exhibitors and also visitors. Some of the shows have had international pavilions and companies that have distributors and offices in China. But, it's not over yet because Shanghai has been closed for the past 2 months because of several cases of COVID in Shanghai. Guangzhou has also been shut for 6 weeks or so and was shut again yesterday, so that it gives a clear run for the Canton Fair coming up in 3 weeks' time, so that they're trying to make sure that there are no COVID cases in the region here. So Greater China remains a very strict regime. The rest of ASEAN is also pretty strict. So Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, still got quite a lot of cases there. And as with Australia and New Zealand, they're looking at zero case sums. I mean, see, Hong Kong, for instance, has had 80 days of zero cases of COVID. Now, still we have the quarantines.
Yeah, they're still not loosening up, are they, Michael?
Not at all. And it doesn't look as though the loosening up is going to happen until probably after the Beijing Olympics in the end of February next year.
Wow.
Then maybe we'll start to open. And we can come on to some of the ideas that we have in regards to how to reopen these sort of markets. Our Japanese market has also been open for the past 8 months or so. Again, as usually in Japan, it's a module market. Mainly Japanese exhibitors and buyers who go there. So it's been great having those shows on. Korea has also. And then we come to India. So India has actually been putting on shows for the past few months. And as you said, Ravi, we had our renewable energy show on recently, and next week, Delhi Jewelry Show. There was also the Bangalore Jewelry Show, which was very successful just a few weeks ago. And so I'm really pleased to see that things are starting to change. We have to be careful, though, because in India still there are some 30,000 cases, though. But basically, people are wanting to get back to work again. You go into the Middle East, you've got Dubai. And we've had several shows going on. There's Informa shows, as well as in Egypt. And those have been pretty successful. And Dubai has taken the attitude, well, we want people who are double vaccinated. Anyone who's not vaccinated can have a vaccine when they arrive. And our ways of making things safe are very good and sustained. And of course, they've just about to open the Expo 2020 there. Throughout Europe, we have had quite a few shows that have taken place. In Milan, these are Informa shows, as well as other shows from other companies. But Milan has had the Salon Immobile, the major furniture show, also Linea Pelli for the leather business, also Micam for footwear. In Monte Carlo, we held the Monte Carlo boat show, which was nearly as good as it was 2 years ago. We've also had the aesthetic show there, which has been a tremendous success last week. So these things are happening. Barcelona also, and I think maybe David has just come back from France. So he can tell us a little bit about what's happening in France. We know in the UK they're starting to open up again this week or so with some new shows in Excel and also in Birmingham. So the problem is that the world is complex at the moment. If you say, when is it going to open up and when is it going to be going back to normal, each is going to be in the areas at slightly different times. And I see in the United States, whereas Informa had one of the first shows, The World of Concrete, in the opening of Las Vegas, we've also had shows in Orlando and Fort Lauderdale and also New York. So I'm really pleased that those are going ahead, and David, I'm sure, will tell us more about those. As to timing, I think it's going to take us a bit more time than we have thought, and it depends on which country you want to talk about. But if we're talking about in Asia, the normality of getting back to 2019 sort of levels may take, as both Kathy and also Jochen have said, to the end of 2023 and possibly 2024, and there may be some fair 2025, back to those sort of levels again. And I think we're going to restart, to reignite the business and get back to positions where you've got marketing funds that are available by exhibitors and such like. They're going to take some time to come. I'll stop there for the moment, and maybe there's some questions people want to ask.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's really, the Informa market is a good case example of the global recovery. We won't dissect them area-wise right now, but Jochen, I'm just going to come to you and to supplement what Kathy had started off talking about, the full recovery date to be end 2023. And you I think are in conformity with that. Can you throw some light on your findings? And we'll come to the challenges and the new norms later. But if you could just tell us about your findings first.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. Thanks, Raghav, also for organizing this. I think in essence, unfortunately, Ravi, we have to differentiate. I mean, let us look at the overall situation, and we always say we have to segment basically two areas. The first one is which we cannot influence. That's like the macroeconomic situation. I mean, the situation right now, supply chains are in disruption. Globalization is getting more and more difficult. We have that huge conflict basically between the world leading powers now, United States and China, the rivalry there. And then, of course, we have all that would be also the external one, all the pandemic-related factors. Let us not forget that in Africa, only 1% of the population is vaccinated right now. Southeast Asian, bit better, but not really such a big difference. So these are all external factors which we cannot influence, but which have an influence on our business. Then we have all the internal factors where we say, okay, what happens? Business travel is in retreat. How do we react to that? We also feel that, let's say, the booth sizes will decline because budgets are lower. That will also have an effect on our industry. And then the third point, I think, is very, very important. In the pandemic, a lot of our clients have learned to work digitally. That will also have an effect on our business. Yeah, and that's from our point at least makes it very difficult to say the recovery will be by the end of 2023. Again, we differentiate. We say if we have largely domestic market, and I would consider the United States to be a largely domestic market, where you have little international participation, we feel those markets will recover fairly early. I mean, Kathy, I think you estimate that by 2023 you will be back to the 2019 levels. We said in our report it will be somewhere about 90% of 2019 levels. So it's very close, and whether the 10% is on your side or on our side doesn't really matter. But we also feel that US as a domestic market will recover fairly quickly, opposite to the very international market, like the markets in Europe, the markets in France, Spain, Italy, and so on. So basically those markets which rely on a significant portion of international participation, both on the exhibitor and the visitor side. So that will take, in our view, much longer, and we are even looking at in JWC at the year 2025, where we feel that could be a year where basically we get back to the 2019 levels. Mind you, however, what I feel also is that there will be some effects which will be eternal. And those effects, I feel, will be that both exhibitors and visitors will be more selective in what show to choose. Travel restrictions and hesitancy to travel will reduce the number of visitors, I feel also longer term, who come to our shows. And let's say the upside we see is basically in the digital, and we can discuss that later, where we can really hope that through digital tools we can compensate any kind of losses on the volume side, on the exhibitor and visitor side, both. Yeah. So when we look into Europe, we see different pictures. Yes, Germany is back on track. You've heard about the Caravan Salon, I think. It was a magnificent show in Düsseldorf, I think 175,000. But again, let's not take that as a role model, because the Caravan show is, in the pandemic times, was an excellent show, basically to meet the needs of the people, because everybody wants to have a mobile home. On top of that, it is a B2C show, and on top of that, I would say 90% of the visitors were from a region 200 kilometers around Düsseldorf. Yeah, so that works. But then, if you look at very international businesses, it's going to be difficult, and we see that in Germany, we see that in France, we see that in Spain, and we see that in Italy, which are the, let's say, prevailing exhibition countries in Europe. UK, again, slightly different, because UK, as the United States, is a largely domestic market. So that might work better, again, depending on how the overall economic situation in UK will develop, which is right now also a little bit tricky. So I stop here, because I could continue as you feel, but I think now it's time for David.
Yeah, good. Well, you've thrown that 2025 figure. We'll come back to that if we can. David, would you agree with your? I keep saying Sebastian. Would you agree
That's
with
okay.
Jochen?
Ravi, if I look like Sebastian, I'm happy.
Yeah. David, what's your take?
Good morning, everybody. Obviously, Kathy and Jochen have a lot of great data to put out there in the marketplace. But what we, I think, can all agree on is that it is going to be a case-by-case situation. Right now, happening today in Louisville, Kentucky, is the largest show the U.S. will probably see all year, the Utility Expo by the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. An absolutely massive show that is, in fact, larger than it's ever been. So they're setting new records with that show today. On a completely opposite scale, I've run 6 events this summer for my own business, and up in Little Hickory, North Carolina, we had our Furniture Manufacturers Expo, which was a show we had to cancel last summer, but we're able to roll over 100% of our exhibitors from that 2020 cancellation into 21. And we actually had a show floor that was 3% bigger than 2019. Now, 3% is not a lot to get excited about, but it's a hell of a lot better than not. Our attendance was not up. Our attendance was down a little. But I think, we in this industry for the 30 years I've been in it have always talked about quality over quantity. And, finally we are, I think, showing the true nature of that need and expectation. I've been lucky enough over the last several months to visit several shows other than my own. I was at Mobile World Congress where we've done a case study for CISO in Barcelona and a number of other shows. And one of the things that stuck out to me most is I was at the FDIC show, which is the Firefighters Directors show up in Indianapolis, and it was a tremendous show. Clarion had a terrific success with that show. I won't quote numbers because that's up to them, but it was very close to what it had been prior to the pandemic in terms of physical size. And while its attendance was down some, the quality of the attendees was obviously terrific. I've never felt so inadequate in my life as walking around with tens of thousands of firefighters walking around a building. But the one conversation that sticks into my mind is I had a conversation with a deputy chief of a mid-sized fire department in the U.S. As part of the interviews we were doing, and we asked them the basic questions: how important is the show to you from a procurement perspective? And of course, he said it was essential. These fire departments, this show is the largest show in that industry. And very key to these people. And I asked him, how many people from your fire department would have did come in 2019? And he said 8. And I said, okay, and how many have you brought this year? And he said 4. I said, okay, so that's indicative of, challenges with budgets and everything else. And he said, yes, but the only important thing is that he came with a $2.5 million purchase order to buy new breathing apparatus. So that purchase order was all that really mattered as far as the exhibitors are concerned. Yeah. He spent $2.5 million at that show. It doesn't matter that he had 4 less people wandering around. He still spent $2.5 million at that show. Yeah. And that's the key that really matters. At the end of the day, we know that almost nobody ever goes to a show on their own. They almost always bring colleagues, bring a team, bring whatever to a show. But the buying power is usually centralized. So long as the buyers are actually there spending money, does it matter whether they brought 8 people or 4 people? We like dense aisles, but at the end of the day, we like to see deals done. We like to see business done, and that's what brings our exhibitors back. Right. So this is, I think, the key element. Obviously, different sectors are going to be challenged for longer periods of time. But Utility Expo is a great example right now of a show that's bigger than it's ever been, happening this week right now. I think, a number of shows will recover very quickly. China, as Michael said earlier, has been a great indicator for us over the last 7-8 months, in that we have seen some massive shows in the Chinese market come back at 80, 90, 100% of their pre-pandemic levels. And that's, China is a unique market, but it's not a unique market. It's a unique market to China, but it's also very indicative of a lot of, as Jochen said, a lot of heavily domestic markets. And the U.S. obviously is still the largest market, both economically and from the exhibition industry side. And we are seeing rapid recovery in a number of markets, not everywhere and not all the time. But we are seeing it in a case-by-case basis. And while we've seen a number of high-profile cancellations, more so, frankly, on the association-owned side than on the for-profit side, we have also seen, for every big high-level cancellation that's out there, there's 10 great shows going ahead.
Right.
I've spoken to contractors who are telling me that they're seeing 90% of their customers going ahead with their shows. Now they may be half the size, they may be 2/3 of the size, but at the end of the day, if we are producing good shows for our customers, they will come back quickly. I think I forget who mentioned. I think it was Jochen that mentioned that some of the corporate travel restrictions are going to be challenges for us, and it's very true. We've got an event. We run a digital forensics conference for Comexposium in several locations, and one item sticks in my mind on that too. Last week we had these are high level techies that come to this event from both law enforcement and corporates, and somebody that had come to the show previously, the conference previously, from American Airlines of all places. American Airlines, one of their IT guys, responded to our inquiries as whether he was joining us next month with a comment that American Airlines has banned corporate travel for themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if that's ironic or not, but it's really stupid. So
no, I mean, you can see that across the airline industry, David, that yes, we're talking, let's say, capacity is coming back and so on, but unfortunately, there is no distinction between the overall capacity and basically business travel and tourism. And tourism is coming back big time. Business will take longer and will be more difficult.
But the airlines need the business travelers because that's where they make their money.
That is true. That is true. Nevertheless, it's the area where they've cut capacity the most.
I know.
Yeah.
I think this is.
I want to thank you, gentlemen. You've got us into the You've got us into the next line of questioning in the challenges, and travel restrictions, etc., is definitely on. So we've heard from you, David, the problems you're facing in the U.S. Before I come to Michael about talking about Asia Pacific specific, the challenges, and then Jochen, quick one from Kathy first, and then you. Is the vaccination obstacle still an obstacle in the U.S.?
What do you mean by an obstacle?
I mean the hesitancy for vaccination. Is that disappearing now, or is there still a strong? I see the smile on both your faces, or is it still there? And will that affect our down the line our business?
Well, the vaccination rates have increased over the last month or so. I read, I believe yesterday, that they've started falling again. But COVID cases in some states, the ICUs are totally full. There are no beds. But our governments are, just moving forward. They're pushing forward. Certainly here in Texas, it's wide open. It's been wide open. Since the lockdown was lifted, and there are shows being held here, certainly in Florida, that has a very, very high rate of COVID cases there. They're moving forward. Orlando was one of the first ones out of the gate and saying, come here to those shows that were not able to be held in other cities and other states. So I think that the only way that here in the United States that it's, we're going to get to where we need to be is through mandatory vaccinations, which is not something that Americans like to be told that you have to do.
Ooh. Yep. That's going to be sticky ground, especially in the U.S. Michael, your obstacles, your your challenges and the new norm quickly? Can you name
Well,
a couple of
I think it
them?
was interesting just listening to that about vaccinations, because in certain parts of Asia, particularly Singapore, but also here in Hong Kong, we're talking about booster jabs. And I know in the UK, some of my friends and colleagues are having booster jabs next month. And some places haven't even had their first jab. So those are concerns. And if we take in the region here in Asia Pacific, it's very interesting to see the differences of take up of the jabs. In China, it's approximately 75 to 80% of officers have had jabs. In Hong Kong, it's about 35 to 40%. It's going up a little bit more, but it's still quite slow because there are no cases here. But in India, 97% of our staff have had the jab. They wanted it. In Japan, until recently, it was about 20%. So there are very differing positions throughout the area there. What I wanted to come back to, though, was just to follow on a bit from what David was saying, and also with Jochen, on airlines, because the airlines have been significantly affected in this region here. Apart from China with internal, which is back to sort of 2019 levels, as it is in the US, the rest of the region are very much behind. I have an app on my phone here which can show every aircraft within about 300 miles of here, and across Hong Kong and Southeast Asia, there may be 5 aircraft which are flying at any one time, and 4 of them are cargo planes. One is only a passenger jet.
Yeah.
Cathay Pacific has 200 aircraft sitting on the airport here in a desert in Australia doing nothing, with 6,400 pilots who have been furloughed. And the worry is the cash flow. And it's not just cash flow of the airlines to bring people in the future. It's also the cash flow, as we discussed about a year ago, for organizers, for stand contractors, for freight forwarders. And
you're telling me.
Yeah. So without this cash flow coming through, the blood that goes through the body dies.
Yeah.
So the important thing in the US is to get that cash going through the system again. So it's great to hear that started to happen, and then therefore back to the stand contracting and freight forwarders, etc. And I think that is key. I am really quite worried in Asia and some other parts of the world where we're expecting the industry to come back to the normal again, but actually there's been quite a lot of damage which has been done already, and they may not have the capacities with people and experience to sort of get back into the size of shows back in 2019, let alone, and we can come on to it later, is in regards to staff who are no longer in the companies, who have gone to other businesses because there hasn't been the work. And also they're getting higher pay working for marketing or financial services.
Yeah, well said. Jochen, you want to throw some more light from a European perspective on the challenges? You did touch on a few aspects in terms of travel, and vaccinations seem to be in order.
I think there are a number of challenges for our industry which we have to address and which we have to overcome. One of the most pressing issues is definitely people. I mean, in the course of the pandemic, a lot of people have left our industry, and sometimes I have personally heard that it is difficult to rehire to do basically the jobs they have done. On the other hand, one CEO told me it was the best thing which could happen to us, that we lost about 30% of our people because we need a new kind of people. We need a new brain pool, basically, particularly with regard to digital and so on. So I think it will be a challenge on the one hand to recover on the staff side, and then on the other hand to integrate those new cultures, if we find them. That's another big challenge. If we find them, to integrate these new cultures, the digital savvy people, the data managers, the AI people, and so on, to integrate those into our culture, which is basically face-to-face driven. So that's, I think, one big challenge for the entire industry. It's not only Europe; it's all over the world, whereby we have to see that in China, particularly, the digital part is perhaps not as developed and will not be developed as quickly as in Europe or in the United States. The second part I think we have to address is the sustainability issue. I mean, we are discussing that for many years right now, but not much has happened. And in that sustainability issue, I personally see two big blocks. The one is, which we can influence, that happens on our show floor. Basically, how do we treat waste? What kind of energy do we use? And so on and so on. But the other part, which we cannot influence, is all the travel, the flights, and so on and so forth. And it could be an initiative of our industry to say, okay, let us look whether, let's say, a world with exhibitions is more CO2 neutral than a world without exhibitions, in terms of all these areas which we cannot influence. In other words, is it CO2 better if we have a show? And of course, to this show, let's say 10,000 people from overseas travel. Or is it better if these 10,000 people go on individual trips to see their customers? I think that's an important issue to position our industry in the future. And the last point, I think, for us, which we see, and I'm talking about Europe now, are venues. We see a lot of venues which simply do not meet market requirements anymore. And they are very much focused on the pure big-sized exhibitions. And I personally feel that Europe will see many less big-sized exhibitions and much less big-sized exhibitor booths. The time of exhibitor booths of 2,000 square meters, 1,500 square meters is over, and I feel it is over forever. So venues need to adjust, and the venues we are currently working with in Europe, most of them, you won't believe it, but it is true, most of them reduce the capacity in favor of increasing the quality and adjusting the quality to the new demands of the world. And I think these are really some of the biggest challenges we have ahead of us, and we need to address them either as an industry or as an individual company. And let me finally come to a little bit of an outlook. What we see prior to the pandemic, our industry was growing. It was highly profitable, big margins, good predictability, great cash flow. Everything was fine. Then comes the pandemic, and sort of we all rushed into virtual. Yeah, basically we try to replace, which is not possible, the physical event by virtual event. And now we all of a sudden have a situation where our customers basically got used to that virtual. That does not mean they would not come to the show, but they would always expect to have the digital part, at least for many segments of our business, to have that digital part, let's say, as part of an offering for them, basically for exhibitors and visitors. I don't think that will go away. So the idea basically is that the face-to-face part, the real physical part, will still be there, but will be supported throughout the year by digital offerings. And there, of course, we could discuss for hours how that would look like, but that's a high-level view.
Yeah, well, just to come to your last thing about the virtual, and studies have come out, surveys have come out, including the UFI ones, where the reports are varying whether the customer ultimately, does he want a virtual, does he want face-to-face. But from what I can see in the challenges, we've got cash flows, we've got HR challenges, travel, vaccination, sustainabilities, the venues now not being really conscious of what the new markets are. Great. I've got a few minutes left, and I'm going to ask each one of you a minute each, 2 minutes. We're going to be meeting again 6 months down the line, all right? 6 months away, let's say we're going to have another session. what would be the main subject of our discussion? 6 months away only, not even 1 year. Kathy?
Well, I think, as we've all talked, attendance is going to be lower. Our studies have shown that exhibitors are actually more likely to come back faster than the visitors. Pre-pandemic, exhibitors had a median of 5 shows that they were exhibiting in, and that's anticipated to be back in 2022, later in 2022. And the attendees are participating in just 2. So the attendance is going to be lower, and we've already talked about, the traffic density and the need for us to stop focusing so much on the attendance numbers. However, that's where we make our money, right? Between that and the exhibit booths, and if the exhibitors are going to be purchasing smaller stands, how are we going to make this work? Where are we going to make our profit from? So I think that, there's that. I also think that we're going to be talking a lot more about digital. My husband works for a French company whose very large aeronautical companies their go-to market strategy is digital. And so we as organizers, we need to figure out how can we leverage that? How can we help the exhibitors? Because at the same time that they're moving to digital, they are also having a difficult time with being able to get that information out to the customer.
Right.
So, how do we help them with that go-to market strategy? So I think that that's going to be a larger conversation that's going to begin occurring.
Great. David, what will you be telling us 6 months down the line? Quickly.
I think Kathy's hit a lot of the key points. At the end of the day, I think 6 months from now, we're going to be talking about how the shows have successfully recovered more quickly than others. And I think we'll probably settle on the fact that, so some of it's luck. It depends on which market you're in, which region you're in. To what Jochen said as well. I'd rather have a show in the United States than Germany right now, because I think the United States is, the Germans are victims of their own success. The Germans have the most international shows in the world. That is going to be the toughest and longest for recovery. The U.S. is the largest single market, but it's also the most domestic market. So, I'm happier having shows in the U.S., frankly, than in Germany. So I think we're going to see a lot of that over the next 6 months, too.
Right. And you're going to tell us 6 months from now that the entire United States is double vaccinated, right?
Well, I hope so.
Michael.
Well, certainly it's a split of the world, which is going to be different. So from an informer point of view, as David says, the US is going to be a very good position, and our shows there as well. Also, in terms of the Middle East, where we're very strong, these will continue to grow. In Asia Pacific, we will be still struggling coming out of the COVID issues. And 6 months away is, I know it feels like an age that we've been in this, but it's actually quite near. And so we've got quite a lot to do to prepare. I'm very pleased to say, actually, for the digital offerings in the region here, we've done very well. And we've got good increases in revenues and income. Not the same as those of trade shows, of course, but as Jochen said, this is going to be an amalgamation of square meters and digital going forward. And I think that because I've been in some of the shows which have taken place, that very quickly people at a face-to-face show come back to being very pleased they are where they are. So the magic, the electricity of our shows of people is very quick to be there. So I think that we're going to still see that a lot. And yes, in China, the square meters are there. Maybe not so much on digital at the moment, but they're still growing. And that's where the revenues are going to be. So I think it's going to be quite mixed, even to 6 months, and 6 months is a short amount of time. India, I hope again, what you started so long as you don't go backwards on lots of cases, you've got over, what is it, 800 million people vaccinated already.
Yes,
So
that's right. Yeah.
you've got to make it work.
Yeah, it will work. I'm very confident about India, but today yes. Jochen, 6 months. The pundit
Yes.
will tell us. What will the pundit tell us?
6 months from now, the Olympic Games in China are over. China will open gradually again, which will support our business tremendously. And if you look what happens in China now, we've done an investigation basically in our report. I don't know whether you have a clue of an idea how many square meters in China in terms of venue capacity are under construction. It is exactly 3.3 million square meters under construction. That is more than the entire venue capacity in Germany. You have to bear that in mind, yeah? So the trust of the governments into this business, into this industry is tremendous. And as in the past years, I believe we will see 6 months from now, if nothing, let's say on the pandemic side is happening, we will see 6 months from now that China is again the growth engine for our industry. It has been in the past years, and it will again be the growth engine. In the United States, we will see more light at the end of the tunnel. I feel that also. Europe will continue to be difficult because what David says, because of the internationality. And on top of that, 6 months from now, at least I hope that we will see some of what we call omni-channel business being implemented by some organizers successfully.
Thank you, Jochen. And I cannot resist but to say that 6 months from now, India will be very much back in the game in a very, very big way. Yep.
That was what we expected from you, Ravinder.
We'll all be sitting at the ISO CEO Summit in 6 months talking about this.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's great.
Well done. Well said. Or I can invite you all to the Bukhara in Delhi 6 months from now.
Both is perfect. Both is perfect. We do both.
We do both. Hey guys, you guys have been absolutely fantastic, and I'm really so honored to moderate you. And of course, one thing we can say that 6 months ago there were fewer smiles on our faces. At least the genuine smiles are coming back. So thank you very much, and to all those who are listening in and attending from around the world. I hope you enjoyed the session. I hope you found it productive. It's not easy from an Indian perspective sitting here to do the last session of a heavily packed IMS. Raghav, you have been absolutely brilliant, and hats off to you. You've really pulled this off really well. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. So go back to your breakfast or sleep or whatever you do in Mallorca,
Gin tonic.
Gin tonic, right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ravi.
Thanks, Ravi.
Stay safe.
Bye.